Welcome. I'm the Falcon of the West.
And I'm the Prince of Precision.
And we are the Attack Action Podcast. What's up, Isaac?
We're sitting down this Thursday evening to interview a very, very famous, very good player tonight.
Yep. Yuki Lee Bender, the Canadian national champ on Ice Lexi. Incredible interview. The one question I wish I had asked her was how she felt about her giant lady brain that is superior to the tiny male brain, and how that felt to just like beat the crap out of our, beat the crap out of him. It's very late. I've had 2 glasses of wine.
Right. We always do better when we record the intro afterwards. But I think her brain's just superior to all of the rest of ours. So,
Totally. I had just
how it is.
Yeah, it was a great interview, and I had a really great time. And we have a few technical difficulties in the remote podcast, but I'll figure it out, and everybody else listening will also figure it out. So it'll be fine.
Yeah, and I was extremely excited for this interview because Yuki is, a Ranger diehard, Ranger extraordinaire. So taking Ranger to win a national championship is like a dream come true for so many of us out there. It's been a long, long, dark year.
Oh, totally. Yeah, it's great. Yep. So yeah, you have that to look forward to. It's almost 2 hours. So we talk about a lot of different stuff, like her background, how she approached nationals, some deck building choices, etc. And I felt like we didn't even really scratch the surface of a lot of the stuff we could have asked her. So we will definitely be having her back on in the near future for sure.
Yep. So before we plug our socials and get right into the interview, I just had one piece of news or shout out that I did see that Matt Rogers has started a card grading company, and I just want to wish him well in that, and very, very much hope that this company is a success, because I'm not a big collector or interested in having a lot of cards graded, but I do have a few that I would if there was not a 1 year wait and $200 price tag attached to grading one card with like Beckett or some of the big companies that are just extremely backlogged, and also have had, I think, their quality control go quite a bit down. So just having a card specific grading service that has a reasonable price tag and a reasonable timeline would be well welcome, I think, for a lot of people in this game. So good luck to you, Matt. Taylor, what are our socials?
I hope Matt crushes it as much as he does the flesh and blood scene. That would be great. So yeah, social media. Both me and Isaac are on Twitter at BattleBroTaylor, at BattleBroIsaac. You can find us on Instagram at the Attack Action Podcast, Facebook at the Attack Action Podcast. Send us an email at the Attack Action Podcast at gmail.com. We love to hear from y'all. You have been doing a great job leaving comments on the YouTube versions of these podcasts, and we really much appreciate that. It's just great to get to interact with everybody, a little bit more readily, because if you haven't done a podcast, you just kind of like look into your co-host's eyes and then post this somewhere on the internet, and then that's it. So it's good to know that there's an audience and people out there. So we always appreciate that.
Yeah,
Well,
your brief comments or emails or whatever are very you know, heartwarming and very much appreciated. So
yeah,
keep it up and thank you.
yeah, it's like pretty cliche. You probably hear that on the other 20 podcasts you listen to, that it means a lot. But those podcasters and ourselves really do mean that it is, just really, really special. So keep that up. Speaking of
Yep.
special, we also have a Patreon. And if you find value in our podcast and what we do and that sort of thing, and you are of financial means, we would love it if you supported us and helped us keep the lights on and the mics hot, as it were. There's some benefits to that too. You get to be a part of the really cool Discord we have going on, and you get some stickers and a play mat and that sort of thing. And it just really, helps us out and enables us to continue this endeavor and improve it. Really, that's like the big thing is being able to improve our craft with technically and with hardware and that sort of thing. So
Speaking
yep.
of, um, uh, we're almost simultaneously launching a new episode of our sister podcast, The Reaction Step, which is a YouTube exclusive. And because Thanksgiving is coming up and there's just a lot of shit going on right now, we're releasing this episode and also a new episode on YouTube. So go over and check that out. We are also partnered with Fab Foundry. Use our affiliate link, helps us out, helps them out, gets you some singles. Win, win, win.
Totally win, win, win. Yeah. So you probably won't hear from us again until December. And Lord knows what we're going to do then, but we're going to take the time that we have off to figure that out and come at you with a new hot episode. So look forward to that.
You wait.
Just you wait. But before then, we have this great episode with Yuki, the Ranger Queen herself. I hope you enjoy this interview as much as we did, and we will see you in the next episode. All right, here we are. The interview has started. We're here with Yuki, the Canadian national champion. Obviously, Isaac is also here. What's up, everybody?
How's it going, Taylor?
Great. I'm pretty psyched. Yuki, how are you on this fine Thursday evening?
I'm doing great. It's a pleasure to be on the show. I feel so honored that I've been invited. I'm looking forward to chatting with you too.
Well, you have done something that nobody in the history of the world has ever done before. And that is won a major tournament piloting Ranger.
Hell yeah.
And you also won the biggest tournament piloting Ranger. So congratulations to you, and we're very happy to have you on. But first, I think we would like to get to know you a little better, and then we'll jump back into the nitty gritty.
Yeah, for sure.
So, go ahead. What do you do? Where are you from? Give us all of the background detail. Start from, we won't go back too long, but age 5. Start there and then bring us to the present.
Yeah, for sure. So I live in Vancouver, BC, born and raised here, and I love card games. Before Flesh and Blood, I played Magic quite a bit, primarily a limited player in Magic the Gathering. I played a lot of Draft. Outside of card games, I really enjoy the outdoors. I go hiking, camping, skiing. Lots of beautiful things to do in BC, and I feel so fortunate to live here. In terms of work, I'm a high school teacher. I teach math and business ed, so marketing, accounting, that kind of a thing. So yeah, it's really just, card games have mostly been a hobby for me, and I'm quite competitive and I like to do well, but it's also never been the main focus. I sort of have a lot of other things I'm juggling and have going on in the back as well.
Totally. I can super relate to everything you said. Teacher, outdoor enthusiast, competitive, too many other hobbies to really win nationals, but you did it. And congratulations again.
Totally.
Thanks
And
so much.
I also like, I love to snowboard and climb and like do a lot of outdoors things, and sometimes feel a little bit like an outsider in the competitive card gaming or board gaming community. So it's very refreshing to hear that. Nice way to, I don't know, diversify.
It's still
Yeah.
possible for me, you and Isaac. It's still possible for us.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. There's often not a lot of overlap between those communities. I find it on both sides, actually. In the outdoors, you tell them about the gaming and nerdy stuff, and they're kind of like, oh, okay. And then the same thing on the other side, they're like, oh, you go outside and do things and do sports. So it's interesting to straddle the two of them, but it's, yeah, I love them both, and I couldn't imagine not doing one of them. So.
Nice. And so I find, and like, I never really have anybody to talk to about this besides like Taylor, right? But I find that there's like a lot of overlap mentally between, a lot of these things, right? Like you're kind of problem solving under pressure, whether it's like, or problem solving like under fatigue and pressure, whether you're like on a wall or like, playing in top 8 of nationals or whatever. It's just like a different puzzle for your brain under different, types of, pressure and time constraints and all this stuff, which I guess like are very different, but it's just, that's like what I enjoy about all of them, I guess.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think there is more overlap than you might think. And, a lot of that kind of getting focused and getting in that mental space where you're just able to execute and able to perform what you know and what you practiced is very similar between the two of them. And I do think I borrow a lot, from the outdoor stuff in my gaming stuff, and also my gaming, I think, influences the outdoors and physical activity that I do too. I don't think they're separate at all. So yeah, totally agree with you.
Nice. That's super cool. Yeah, where I take away my like lifetime of athletics experience is like the practice leading up to like big events. Like we did a very good job preparing for Road to National season, and had results to back up our practice and our training and that sort of thing. And that's like the sort of stuff I like really nerd out about, is like, oh, the incremental advantage I gained in, playing this 3 times in a row, the things I've learned, and, that sort of thing, tweaking little things, or just like getting to continually iterate on stuff you learned before. I don't know, and just being regimented and about it. And what's the other? Well, whatever, y'all's understand what I'm trying to say here, what I'm getting at.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think often just like having a clear goal when you're practicing or something you're working towards is super important. It's really easy to go, oh, well, we're playtesting and you're just playing a bunch of games, but you're not really focused or intentional about it. And
Yeah,
it's, I don't want to say it's
intentional.
not useful, but it's not as useful as it could be if it's a little bit more thoughtful and a little bit more guided. Yeah.
Heck yeah. Great. Cool. Um, so you played Magic before. Were there other like TCGs you kind of cut your teeth with, or was it just like Friday Night Magic? here I go, basically, until now.
Yeah, so it was pretty, in terms of card games, it was mostly Magic. I started playing Magic as a kid in the 90s, actually. I was, I think, 5 years old when I first started learning to play Magic. Um, I didn't really know how to play the game. I just saw the cards and I thought that they were cool. And I think I took some cards home and a rules book, since that's how you learn to play games back then. Some little rules book, and I honestly had no idea. It was kind of, I was a pretty good reader for my age, but it was over my head. And my mom was amazing and read through it and taught me the game and sat down and played with me. And for a long time, I was mostly playing with actually my family. So we would, get together on weekends with my mom, my dad, my uncle, and my cousin, and we'd all just basically play Commander. Commander wasn't a format at the time, but that's basically what we were doing. We're just playing what we had in a big free-for-all game, and it was a ton of fun. Eventually, I started playing at high school and things like that, but I really wasn't into organized play. I didn't even really know that it was a thing. I just really liked the game, and I definitely knew the rules and enjoyed deck building and things like this, but it was more of a casual hobby.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until maybe Hearthstone that I kind of got into more competitive card games. So I did play Hearthstone for a little while, which was fun. But then every time I was playing Hearthstone, I was like, well, this just isn't, like, I just like Magic more, and Hearthstone's convenient, but like I kind of just wish I was playing Magic. And so eventually I decided to get into Magic, and in particular, I really wanted to get into Draft, since that just seemed like such a fun way to play. So that started out as FNM, and then I started going to GPs and was starting to get into PTQs and things like that. I started about maybe 4 years ago in the competitive Magic scene. So yeah, I've had some experience. I've day two GPs and things like that, but I've never won a major event. I think I was sort of just starting to get into competitive Magic when, of course, the pandemic happened and everything kind of got shut down. And it was around that time that I discovered Flesh and Blood and just fell in love with the game. And honestly, Flesh and Blood's the first game I feel like I've really enjoyed Constructed in. In Magic, I just found it hard to get into. The deck building is so challenging if you're somebody that has other things going on. There's just so many games that people play, and there's not really that much room to build a new deck if you just have, a few hours a day at most to be pouring into it. People are just playing so much more. So I think Flesh and Blood just being a little bit smaller and having more room to innovate was a real breath of fresh air. And I also like that every game is, an actual game, and you feel like you have agency and you get to do things and make decisions. Whereas, sometimes for Magic, you fly to this big event, and before you know it, you're knocked out and you didn't really even get to play any cards because you just couldn't draw lands or something like that. And that was really frustrating.
Yeah, totally. I fully understand that sentiment. I stopped playing Magic, and I mentioned this on the podcast a couple of times, so sorry, fans, that you have to hear this again. But I would only assume there's probably like 10 of you that remember all of my stories, so it doesn't really matter.
The Taylor diehards.
Yeah, the eagle eye spotters, falcon-eyed spotters. But I stopped playing like freshman year in high school. We had like study hall, and we just like did not need to study. So we just played like Magic really silently, and we were like the only couple of freshmen in this upper class study hall, which already felt terrible. Like I'm playing Magic next to all of these seniors and juniors, whatever though. But I brought this like green monster deck. It just had a bunch of like huge creatures in it, and I was like, this is gonna be unbeatable. What are you gonna do when I have like multiple 7/7s out there? And then I just got like counterspelled and all these other mechanics that I was just like, what the fuck is the point if I can't just like play out creatures? Like, I don't even get this. This game is dumb now. And that was kind of like the end. And then my friend Mark, shout out to my other best friend Mark, he had this deck that just like he sat there and did nothing and just gained a bunch of life, and then had a card that just said if you have X amount of life over your starting a health total, you just like win the game. And I was like, this is also stupid. So I'm super out. So there we go.
I really liked Magic. I also played like 5th grade to 7th grade or whatever, or freshman year. But I really liked it because it was, I guess it wasn't pre-internet, but it was pre like forums full of the meta game. So it's like everybody had different cards, and it's just like what you picked out of your packs and what you could score, and then what you could like craft, you know, against your friends who have like different toolboxes and different brains. And it was just like kind of the ultimate deck building, because that's like my favorite part of a lot of these games. So it was just, without the meta already being broken on the internet, it really you know, made the game, I don't know, just like limitless and fun.
Totally. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that sentiment. And that was always one of my favorite things. And I think that's one of the things that's made me enjoy limited so much, is like I have that experience I had as a kid. Because now, you know, it's like, well, I can buy whatever cards I want, but being able to open up a booster pack and you're in pack 3 and you see, I don't know, like a Weave Lightning that's worth nothing, but you're so pumped to get that red Weave Lightning because it's perfect for your deck and it's exactly what you're missing. Like that's such an awesome feeling, and I think it's something that it's kind of lost now with how easy it is to buy cards online or at shops. And I just really love just like the scrappiness of it and just putting together the best deck that you can. And sometimes you get this card that's not very good, but it's exactly what you need, and that's awesome. So
Yeah, totally. I really like limited play, always have. I'm a little disheartened in the Tails format. For some reason, I suck ass at Tails Limited. I'm just like, I don't know what it is. I can't. I think I draft pretty well. Like, many times I'll be like, this deck is so good. Isaac, look at these cards. This is what's in my deck. And he's like, holy shit. I'm like, yeah. And then I go like 1-2, you know, on the local armory
Yeah,
for
your deck
whatever
last
reason.
weekend was broken. It was crazy. It
It
was
was
so
so
good.
it was so good. And I just chuffed it up in Swiss for whatever reason, you know. I don't know what it is. My
yeah,
brain just
sometimes
doesn't work well in this set.
sometimes I think certain formats click better than others, and Tails is a little bit funny. The games can just be so quick,
Mm-hmm.
very very condensed, very explosive. A lot of the decks don't block that well, but it can do a lot of damage. I mean, I guess old time blocks well, but certainly Briar and Lexi are just so aggressive, and the games are very tight, but also just kind of very. They can be over in a flash, and yeah, it seems like, you know, a small mistake or just drawing dead for a turn can be enough to really put you on the back foot.
Yeah, or like you win the dice roll and you decide to go second for some reason over first, you know, and then
Mm-hmm.
you just like lose also because of those decisions, which is kind of tough. It's very punishing, which is not like historically has not been typical for Flesh and Blood, you know, unless you're like first time playing against someone who really knows how to play Dorinthia. That's like the only time it really has felt like so punishing. You're like overpowered. How am I ever supposed to learn how to play this game? But I did want to ask Yuki. Uh, so I asked Hayden Dale this question, and it turned out, you know, it was pretty fun. So we'll see how it goes here. But do you have, what are like 1 to 3 super interesting facts about Yuki?
Oh, 1 to 3 super interesting facts. I feel like I would have, a lot of the ones I would go to would be a lot of my outdoors stuff is usually what I would say. I've been skiing my whole life. I've skied over most of the province, and yeah, it's something that's just been so integral and crucial to who I am as a person and my development as a person. So that's one.
Very cool.
Um, Another one is that, you know, I love mathematics and problem solving, and I think that's a lot of kind of what I get out of video games, and card games as well, is that sort of creative problem solving process. And I find it so interesting how sometimes people that love games don't necessarily love mathematics, and it's such a shame because there's such an awesome overlap there, and that's another passion of mine, is kind of like sharing that, or trying to share and show people that. And I think that's part of what's made me become a teacher and want to do that, is just share that passion, because I think a lot of people sort of get the wrong impression of mathematics, and it's a shame. I guess the last one is that I used to be really into video games, and played some games pretty competitively. I was a big real-time strategy player. I played a lot of Warcraft 3 and StarCraft, and I wasn't a professional or anything, but I was pretty darn good. I was like a, very high-ranked ladder player that played with a lot of the stronger players, at least in North America, which, that's sort of the running joke in video games, is that North America is not very good. But, within the context of North America, I was not bad. So, yeah, I guess that's my three.
Awesome.
Nice.
That was some very well-rounded answers. I really liked your point about math also, because I mean, obviously it's such a broad topic and I think it's appealing to everyone, right? But yeah, it just has to be kind of digestible, right? Because I find astrophysics really fascinating, but maybe like theoretical, or statistics or something, I'm less intrigued by. But it's all math, right? So I think it's just how you, I guess, like what classes you take, or how it's presented to you, because everybody that's like playing a lot of these competitive technical games is digging the math in one way or another, I think.
Yeah, totally. And I think it can depend a lot on context also. Like probability has never been my most favorite topic in mathematics, but then, certainly when I'm building a deck, I'm thinking a lot about, what are my odds to draw certain types of hands or certain cards. I'm busting out the hypergeometric calculator and running all those probabilities. And you need to know how you're building your deck, and what kind of odds it's giving you, and whether you're trading off power for consistency, and if you're okay with that trade-off. You really need to be making informed decisions if you're building a deck. And so it's interesting how the context can kind of really shape how interesting it is.
100%. Yeah, I totally get it. Like we will have we kind of have like weird arguments about like ratios in our deck sometimes, and then like either our friend Colin, what's up Colin, or Thomas, what's up Thomas, will like also bust out the calculator and be like, all right, let's get down to the nitty grits here. And it's always like uh I don't know. It's always informative, and it's like a super good tool. It just helps you make, like you said, informed decisions like way better. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that last statement you said, really, because that's like, I think that's the most challenging part for me is, um, consistency versus, threat level or potency or whatever. And it's like very hard for my brain to, I guess, quantify each of those and then weigh them against each other, right? Because it's like you need a certain degree of consistency, otherwise nothing happens. But then if you make the most vanilla consistent deck, you are just average, right? And there's like, of course, they can coexist, but I think that's where my deck building starts to, I guess that's just where the reps come in, right? Like you have to put in the practice to like really feel that out, because I think it's hard for me to, completely or realistically envision, how it's going to perform when weighing those two things.
Yeah, no, totally. I think it's a very iterative process where you try something out and it seems great, and usually often part of that idea will be great, and you need to kind of tweak other parts. So I think there is a experiential piece to it as well. It's not just the raw numbers, but yeah, the two of them kind of do work very well together. And yeah, I don't think there's anybody out there that can build a deck without testing it out. You just there's always things that will surprise you, little interactions or matchup specific things you haven't thought about. So yeah, always lots of tweaking to do for sure.
Hell yeah. Well, with that, this is just a great segue into kind of, you know, so national season, where do you start in Flesh and Blood? Do you come in like in 2019, 2021? Are you a part of like the skirmish season where everybody's playing webcam games? Did you start at Road to Nationals? Tell us your Flesh and Blood history. Oh wait, before you do that, keep that in your mind. The people really want to know: are you truly a Ranger main, or are you just kind of like dabbling a little bit? Who's your favorite hero or class?
Yeah. I would put myself as largely Ranger main. I can be pretty competitive and pretty spiky, and if Ranger's not the class to bring, I won't bring it. But Azalea was my favorite hero by far when I started playing the game.
Woo!
And yeah, I'm sort of sad that she hasn't really had her time in the sun. Fingers crossed that she does get more support. I was really disappointed, honestly, with Tails. Like, as a New Horizon is so cool, then you realize it doesn't work with her bow, and she doesn't get to use Voltaire, and it just felt like, even just getting to use Voltaire might have been enough to give her a real fighting chance in the format, and I was hoping for that. But who knows? I mean, there will be more sets and more Rangers, so hopefully. But yeah, Ranger is probably my favorite class. I also really enjoyed playing Prism in the Monarch meta. I think the whole Aura's game plan and all the, setting up that board state and how everything comes together was very cool to me. And I really like drawing cards too. So, Tome of Divinity, Three of a Kind, that's kind of my jam.
Sweet, awesome. That's really cool. Kind of the power ladies of the game, really.
Well, Leviah is somewhere plotting your demise.
Absolutely.
There's just like too many jokes after that one. My brain kind of like locked up for a second, But that's very true, Isaac. You are correct. So yeah, talk to us about like your previous Flesh and Blood, like competitive scene. Did you like, I mean, it's hard in the US to like know who players are in other countries. Which is like kind of a shame. I would really like to know. But yeah, tell us about all that stuff.
For sure. So I'm trying to think of when I started playing. I think it was during Arcane Rising, maybe very early Crucible. It would have been whenever LSV was putting out gameplay videos of Flesh and Blood. Because I watched LSV from Magic and I saw this game and I went, wow, this game looks really cool. Like I had heard people talking about it before, but it wasn't until I saw people playing the game that I actually had an interest in picking it up myself. So I actually played on Tabletop Simulator with a friend of mine. I just said, this game looks really cool. Do you want to try it out? And we did. And then after trying it out for a while, I bought the cards. And unfortunately, that friend I was playing with lives in California. She's quite far away from me. So I just kind of buying cards just because I wanted to have them. I didn't really know what I was going to do with them at the time. Wasn't quite ready to pick up webcam, but I have bought some Welcome to Wrath and some Arcane Rising. And I think I was buying cards kind of right when Crucible of War First Edition was out in North America. I got a few boxes, and I actually have like a cold foil Perch Grapplers that I got back when, prices were actually pretty reasonable. So that kind of roughly when I started collecting cards. Maybe February or March of this year is when I started playing in armories. And first thing I did was I brought Azalea to the table and was trying really hard to win. And I was doing okay at the start, sort of like, 50-50 record or so. Gradually creeped my way up, managed to get a third one time, which was kind of cool. Got a promo. That was exciting. But eventually I hate to say it, but I kind of had to try other things. I got tired of losing with Azalea, getting just smashed by Ira over and over again. It was rough.
You're playing Blitz. I think
Yeah.
Azalea into Ira Blitz is like impossible. It's just not. You're not playing
No,
the same game. But
no.
yeah, I hear you. I found like I went to 2 road to Nats with Azalea, and then I top 8'd one, which was like great. But then yeah, after a while, you just get tired of like as much as you love the mechanics and the character and the flavor. It's just like I just auto lose to a player who's been playing for a week on Control Ninja, and it gets defeating after like a year. So I also switched off, to Levia for a while and stuff. So I totally get your loyalty can only go so far. But also
Yeah.
agreed, just let her use Voltaire. That's like all we need, you
Yeah, she
know?
doesn't need that much, really. I think
Yeah.
she's really close. She has a lot of powerful cards. Her hero ability is very powerful. So I don't know. More Rangers will come eventually, and
Yeah.
hopefully she'll have her time to shine.
Yeah, we'll see what happens in the Everfest.
Yeah, yeah,
Could happen.
totally.
Yeah.
Let's see. You were also asking about sort of my local scene. So my local scene is not huge in BC. When I started playing, we usually have around 8 to 10 players in webcam events, and kind of all over the province. So BC is really huge, and we'd have some people living on the island, some people in the lower mainland area, which is where I live, and then some people up north as well. So we were quite spread out, and it was a really small scene. And I heard that not too long, like a few months before I started, it was like 4 people playing. It was really, really tiny. Um, Now it's gotten a little bit bigger. Just about a month ago, we started having some in person events at one of my local stores. We usually get about 8 players for a draft, which is kind of perfect and a lot of fun. Um, and then one of my other stores is still doing online blitz events, and I'd say we pretty regularly get between 12 and 16. It's usually capped at 16. Um, and that's mostly webcam still, just since, again, we have people all spread out and trying to kind of keep the community together. So that's sort of my local scene. We did have one road to nationals in BC. I was on Prism for that, and I think I played against a whole lot of chain in that road to nationals. I think I went 3-2 overall, and I think I came in 9th, just bubbled out of top 8. So unfortunate there, but yeah, one of my friends, well, 2 of my friends top 8'd that I test with, and one of them actually came in 4th and got his qualification for nationals. So at that point, he was sort of encouraging us, oh, like, I want to go to nationals. It'd be awesome if you guys could come. So we ended up grinding XP really hard. But there weren't really other road to nationals in our area that we could go to. So that was kind of it. I know the 2 of them took a road trip out to Calgary, which is about a 12-hour drive for anybody that doesn't know. And they did it. They started at 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning. And I just said, you know what? Like, I like this game, but I don't know if I like this game enough to do that. It sounds miserable. So yeah, that's kind of my run up to national season. I'd say that we have a pretty tight knit community though, and there's a lot of fairly strong players. It's sort of interesting. There's a lot of players that I thought were pretty good, but you never know until you kind of have something to measure it against. But it was great to see. I saw Oliver top 8 in nationals. He was also somebody who top 8'd a road to nationals. My testing partner, Jay, came in 9th. He bubbled out, and the only reason that he wasn't in was because I beat him twice in Swiss, once in draft and once in constructed. So that was a little bit too bad. You never want to take your friend out, but it is what it is. And we had someone else from BC also do really well. They were also in the day 2 draft pod. So yeah, cool to see our small little region kind of, I think, surprising a lot of the rest of Canada. Ontario has the biggest scene up here, and people really know each other there. And I think they weren't really expecting too much from people from BC, and it was just awesome to see us represented there.
Nice. Yeah, stick it to them.
Is Red Riot Games in Ontario?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Ontario, okay. Yeah, that's like the what us Southerners down here know from the like Flesh and Blood scene in Canada.
Mhm.
Yeah, in all of the road to Nats we went to, I had to play a Bud. I played our friend Mitch, who's been on the podcast a few times in our very first road to Nats, and I had to play Isaac like second round at the other road to Nats I went to.
Yeah, I played Thomas round 1, 32 players with
Yeah,
only two who know each other.
yeah, totally. Just haven't. I swear to God, we were gonna play each other at Vegas too. Like we all kept winning in the same round, and it was like, oh my God, we're gonna have to play
Yep.
each other at with 800 people here. It was, it's like for sure the worst every time.
Yeah, no, it never feels good. I guess the one silver lining was the last time I played him was actually the finals of the last draft pod, and that was the win and in for top 8. So we kind of sat down and went, at least one of us is in top 8 for sure. We just don't know which one, and we agreed that the winner would buy dinner for the other one, just so it stung a little bit less, which was nice. That was a really
Nice.
good idea on his part.
That is a good deal.
Yeah, I told Isaac if we ever met in the finals of any event, like I do not care what happens. Like
Yep.
it does
We already
not matter.
made it.
Yeah,
Yep,
if
already
we're
there.
both in the finals, like incredible job, and
Yeah.
you can win, Isaac. It's just too much pressure for me in that moment. So tell us a bit about like your preparation for nationals. So you got convinced, you freaking grinded it out, and then what? So were you on like a different deck besides Lexi leading up to nationals, or were you just like Lexi is going to win it? And when you went to nationals, I know this is a lot of questions, and you'll get there. You got a big brain. Um, were you like trying to win? Were you like, I got to win
Mhm.
nationals 100%, or were you just like, I just want to make day 2, or what?
Right. And this is in the context of, I guess, a month or two before nationals, and then the 3 weeks before for you, I guess Lightning Briar wins at UK.
Right.
So tell us about,
Yeah.
all of
for
Taylor's
sure.
questions within that context of, the before and after bomb.
Yeah, totally. So initially, kind of, I didn't really realize that I was going to be grinding for nationals until September, I think, which gave me about a month. And I really didn't have very much experience at all. I had gone camping a whole bunch over the summer, and I hadn't really been playing Armory. So I was playing a lot of webcam events at a lot of stores that I had never played at before. But I did manage to get there. Luckily, the Canadian XP leaderboards are not too bad at the moment. The scene is not huge. It's definitely less XP than for you folks in the States. Coming up, though, I was mostly focused on draft prep initially, just because I figured I could get a pretty big edge with the limited background that I have in Magic. I also knew that for our event, it was the format was 3 rounds 3 rounds constructed, 3 rounds draft, 3 rounds constructed, and then day 2, and then day 2 was 3 rounds of draft and then cut to top 8, which was constructed. So draft was half of your Swiss rounds, and that's a huge deal. And I just figured that was a great place to start. Another contributing factor was that at the time I was on Prism, I had played it all through Road to Nationals, and after the banning of Seeds of Agony for Chain, Prism looked to be, one of the decks to beat. And I just said, well, I'm really comfortable with this deck. So I always kind of have this as a comfort pick, and I can lean into this if I need to. So I was mostly focused on draft. I did tinker with Lightning Lexi a little bit, just because how could I resist? I love Ranger. But I ultimately felt like the deck is, at least the deck that I was building was a little bit, it was very linear, very fragile. I felt like you could, when you drew well, you could beat just about anybody, but I also felt like you could kind of fold to just about anybody if they drew enough command and conquers and pressured you the right ways. It was really hard. You didn't have that much control over the game. So I wasn't too hot on Lightning Lexi. And then where things really shifted was, like you said, UK Nats. Lightning Briar came out, and I was watching this deck, and at first I was like, this deck is hilarious. Like, it's playing all these cards that nobody plays, like Nimblism,
Totally.
and just like,
Totally.
is this real? And then the more I watched it, I was like, okay, this deck's actually very, very good. But as soon as I saw it, I went, well, I know what deck is going to have a good matchup against this. It's Ice Lexi, and I kind of knew that because I had been playing Ice Lexi in Blitz actually the whole time. I just thought it was really fun, and I thought it was actually pretty well positioned in the meta. I have a pretty strong Ice Lexi deck in Blitz. It's a little bit Ira's a little bit of a tough matchup. I think you have game, but it's hard. But a lot of your other matchups are really good. Like you just crushed Dorenthia, for example. You're very good into Briar. So I had already had a bunch of experience piloting the deck and also had some good thoughts about like ratios, what cards I wanted, things like that. So I had tuned the list quite a bit, and actually the list that I took to Nationals is almost exactly the list that I ended up drafting up that weekend after UK Nats. I went, okay, I have a Blitz deck that's not a CC deck. I'm going to make some tweaks, bring in some more targeted cards, adjust things, make sure I have sideboard plans. But yeah, it's almost exactly the list that I had started with. And I was just super happy with the list. It was very, very good into Briar. I think in my testing and my Swiss rounds and top 8, I think I must be something like 25-1 versus Lightning Briar. It's absurd. I do think that they can, as Briar, if they practice the matchup and they know how to sideboard and they're a little bit more comfortable, I do think that it's probably not quite that favorable, but I do think it's very, very good for Ice Lexi. So yeah, that's kind of how I settled on the deck.
Nice. I'm very excited to hear that Ice Lexi is good in Blitz. I'm not a big Blitz fan, but you got to play it at some point, and it's just exciting for me to play some Blitz Ranger. So
yeah,
I'll remember
totally.
that for later.
I think it's really solid.
Back to the main topic.
Yeah, no worries. So in terms of my matchups and things like that, I felt like obviously the deck to beat was Briar, and I wanted to have a good matchup there. So Ice Lexi checked that box. And the other matchup that I felt like I really needed to make sure I had under control was Bravo, because Bravo was still a pretty popular deck, and it's a big enough. Like our event wasn't as big as the U.S. Nationals. We had about, I think it was a 96 player cap, and we had about 83 players show up, but it's still a big enough event that you don't know what you're going to come across, and I wanted to make sure I had a plan into Bravo. As I play tested, the matchup was far better than I ever imagined it would have been. I thought it was going to be very difficult, but taxing his defense reactions is very, very good. When you make Sinks or Fate Foreseens cost 1 resource, they become actually pretty terrible cards, and same thing with Unmovable. If you put it from 3 to 4, the card's just not very good.
So you're just talking about opening with Lexi's ability to give him a Frostbite, right? Not Heart of Ice. Yeah.
No, not Heart of Ice. I had started with it, and then I just realized like I'm already giving them a Frostbite. Putting it up to 2 doesn't really do anything. They're playing a bunch of blue cards. I'm actually just kind of taxing myself and not getting Tunic's effect as well.
Yeah, and it fucks up the whole cost curve of your deck. It's like really rough.
Yeah, it really does. I think it could maybe be good if you're on Lightning, perhaps, but yeah, for Ice, it's just not really a card that I'm interested in running unless you really want some. I don't know, if you wanted it for Kano or something, I could see that. I think it's probably quite good into Kano, but
the Frostbite does that anyway into Kano as well, right? So then they kind of only have to play on your turn.
Exactly. So yeah. I mean, it does have the Arcane Barrier as well, which helps. But yeah, I just, the card I thought was important, and the more I played, the more I was like, well, no, you just don't need this. And I felt like you could really be pretty good into control. You can go very wide by setting up 6-card hands and sort of attacking with 3 arrows. And you can also go really, really tall with Dominate and just push through damage. They run out of defense reactions, they run out of armor, and you can chip in. So my plan was to board up a little bit. I was playing, I think, 68 or 69 cards in that matchup with one Remembrance. I brought in some yellow Weave Ices, some extra red arrows. And I felt really good in the matchup. I think that if they're on a fatigue plan, I was quite favored. And I think that if they were trying to play more of a straight up race you and try to cripple you, the matchup's closer and harder for sure, but I still think it's pretty reasonable for Lexi. So I was, when I had those two matchups squared away, I was pretty happy with the deck. And certainly, I didn't have as much time to prepare as I would have liked. I was in the middle of preparing report cards, but I felt like I could kind of draw on a lot of my Blitz experience, actually. Like, I knew what Dorenthia played like in Blitz. I knew what, I don't know, I knew what Bolton played like in Blitz. I knew that Bolton's really card hungry, so he's going to have trouble. I did test the Prism matchup a little bit, and I felt like I could draw conclusions there pretty quick just because I played a lot of Prism. So I was actually very confident in the deck, and I felt like all my matchups were at least close, and many of them were actually good. The one matchup I was quite worried about was Oldham. So, but wasn't expecting too much, and I think that most decks in this format, if not all, have a tough matchup. So,
yeah, totally. It's a very healthy time. Well, that's super dope. I'm like super psyched on Ice Ranger. It's so cool. What I did wanted, do you know what the like meta breakdown was for Canadian Nats? Like how many of this hero, that hero, etc.?
yeah, so I don't think that they gave us a full day one breakdown, but we did see the day two breakdown in terms of, which is sort of like a funny breakdown to look at because we played one round of draft and then it was top 8.
Right.
But in terms of the decks that made it to the top tables, there was, I think it was about like 8% Lexi, 4% Oldhim, 55% Briar, something like that. And we had a Kano in there. And that's most of it. There's a few other decks sprinkled in, but that was the vast majority, which just kind of matches up with my experience in the event. I saw a few dashes as well. There might have been some dashes in day two as well. But yeah, primarily Briar. There actually really wasn't even that much Bravo, which surprised me. I played one in round one, and then I never really played against or even really saw Bravos like sitting close by. So that surprised me, but
nice. Did you beat the round one Bravo?
I did, yeah. It was a fairly close game. He managed to, I had a bit of an off turn where I pushed damage but no disruption, and he was able to get off a crippling crush and then go back to back with Terror Sunder, and I was on the back foot, but I did manage to kind of claw back tempo and slowly chip in for damage, and I had a little bit of a surprise lethal off of shock charmers. I don't think he quite realized that I could kill him, but I did have it because I had the blue in hand and a tunic resource. So
nice.
Yeah.
Sick.
Yeah, I felt like, well, a couple points there. At least at U.S. Nationals, it's like Lightning Briar has such a good matchup into like Bravo and Prism and like these other decks that like I was personally worried about. So in that case, it's just like, yeah, once you make day two or once you just win like 3 or 4 games, then it's just like mostly Lightning Briars. So that at least made, my concern about Bravo quite a bit less since it just gets kind of trampled by the other top tier deck, which really helps this game plan.
Yeah, totally. And I was sort of on a similar game plan of just, I was most nervous about the first rounds. I was just like, I don't know what I'll run into, and sort of hoping that at least I know what my deck does and hopefully my opponent doesn't really. And maybe that gives me a little bit of edge in the matchup. But yeah, I did wind up facing, like a Bravo and then a Kano that I lost to. Then like Briar, I think I played the Mirror once, which was a bit of a disaster. It was the very last round of day one, and I just did not play very well. But it happens, and it was kind of good. A little bit of a wake up call to not let down my guard.
Which worked, right?
Yeah.
Because then you just go undefeated day 2 all the way to the finish in our national
Yeah.
champ. So
Yeah, I had to 3-0 my draft to get in. I went to day 2, 6-3, and the way that I worked out was that you needed to be 9-3 to get in. A few 8-4s did get in, but it was all people from the top table. So, kind of knew going into that day that I had to win out of the draft in order to get there. So,
Which is quite a lot of pressure for draft. I mean, even I know you're very comfortable with draft, but it's like, you can get past weird things, you can get weird signals, you can just like drop the ball yourself. There's like a lot of factors that go on there.
totally.
So you went 6-0 in draft in this event, and obviously you're well practiced in Magic. Are you just comfortable at the draft table, like day 2 draft table? Are you pretty comfortable, and is it just automatic? Are you able to read and pilot, all of the Tails archetypes? Are you pretty, yeah?
Yeah, I would say that I've drafted and feel pretty comfortable playing anything. I've played, Lightning and Earthbriar, hybrid ones. I've played Lexi quite a bit. I've also played Oldhim, mostly Earth at Oldhim. I guess I don't have a lot of experience as like a Ice Oldhim is the one thing I haven't really played, but I do have some ideas of what the deck might look like. So going in, I was really just interested in finding the open seat. I think in this format, because there's only 3 heroes, often it breaks down as there's 3, 3, and 2. And what I was finding is that if you can be the 2, whatever hero there's only 2 of, you often had a really, really powerful deck, and it was one of the best ways to do well. And in both my drafts, I felt like Lightning as well as Lexi was actually quite undervalued. I think people were worried about the Oldhim matchup, which honestly I was as well. Lexi was maybe my last choice to draft, but at the same time, I just value drafting the open archetype more than I do picking the one that I want the most. And it really paid off. In the first draft, I was one of 2 Lexis, and in the last draft, I was actually the only Lexi. My deck was completely absurd.
Awesome.
Yeah, I had like more overflex and pumps than I could play. I had like an ice package I could board into, or a lightning package I could board into. It was just it was ridiculous. I had everything. I think I had a full suite of armor. It was just it's the best deck I've ever drafted by far.
That's crazy.
Nice.
That's so cool. Yeah. So like we just had our local skirmish, which skirmish season is like season 3 is like over for us because ours was like day 1, weekend 1, which kind of sucks. But like Lightning was like super open in pack 1. So I'm like drafting Lightning, like this is great. And I had like drafted some early like power Briar cards. Like Rites of Lightning was my like pack 1 pick 1, and then somebody passed me another red one, and I was like, sweet, let's see if Lightning's open, and then it was. And so I was just cutting the person off to my left like so hard, like sending signals like Runeblade is not open, Lightning is not open, pack 2 comes around or the draft is over, and I was like, Homer was on my left. I'm like, are you also on Briar? And he was like, yeah. I was like, what are you doing? And so like I wound up with kind of like I was missing some key pieces. It was still like a really powerful deck because of packs 1 and 3 where I had great signals, but pack 2 just like kind of skimped me on like a few things. So even though like me and Isaac talked about this a lot, like I was like, we talked about the whole draft because he was like way across the other table. And I was like, we drafted our like correct seats, but nobody else really did. And so that just like really messed a lot of stuff up for us. And it's just like, I don't know. I don't know how to go around that. You know what I mean? Like, how do I pivot in pack 2? I have no clue. I was like stuck.
That is one thing that's a little bit tricky with Fab, is that you don't have that much ability to pivot. you kind of, I feel like you're usually pretty locked in by pick like 6, 7, 8, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
You're pretty committed. And yeah, sometimes you just have a messy draft pod and it happens. I guess the good thing is often when that happens, most people's decks are also kind of not great. Like it kind of affects the whole pod, and you play in pod, which is nice. But yeah, sometimes you just have a really tough seed, or somebody ends up cutting you, and it can definitely happen. And it's something that I was hoping wouldn't happen, and luckily it didn't.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Amazing job to just go 6-0 in draft. We talked about it on our podcast and kind of like in our Discord and stuff a little bit, like the dual format of nationals, like the limited part is for sure how you separate yourself from the rest of the field. Like Isaac only dropped one game in his like 6 rounds of draft too. And like that for sure helps him get to top 8 at nationals and that sort of thing. So
Yeah, nationals format is so cool. Like when I went into day 2, I was 6-2 by then. So then I'm like a little less comfortable on draft than you are, and so then at that point I was like day 1 it was like awesome, but day 2 you're like, God, I have to really do well, and it's just a little nerve wracking.
Yeah.
Or at least for me it was, just because I didn't feel like confident enough to beat my 8-man table at nationals day 2,
Yeah, I was also pretty nervous, mostly because I knew I had to 3-0. Like 2-1-ing felt, I think I would have been pretty darn confident being able to go 2-1. But 3-0-ing is always hard. And I was hoping to come into day 2 at 7-2, but I didn't do well in the last round of Constructed. I played very poorly in the mirror.
Was it an Ice Lexi mirror or a Lightning?
Yeah, it was an Ice Lexi mirror, and I had all the tempo. And then I had a turn where I could have chosen to play Channel like Frigid or pressure a little bit more and Arsenal it, which is the line that I ended up taking. And then I whiffed on, I didn't draw an ice card in the next hand, and I couldn't play it, or I couldn't keep it around. And then my opponent got out Channel like Frigid and started getting really far ahead. I ended up having to block with my equipment, and I think after I got rid of Lightning Press, after I got rid of New Horizon, I put Lightning Press in my arsenal, which is never a good thing. And
yeah,
I had to have this judge call of, can I Lightning Press their attack after damage has been calculated so that at least I don't hurt myself? And I think I had to like pitch a card to play my Lightning Press. It was just awful. So yeah,
I've thought about that with Blizzard before. I'm like, God, do I just Blizzard my own attack here just to get this card out of here,
Yeah,
which is a little easier than Lightning Press.
Okay, we had some weird technical difficulties, but we're back now. Go ahead, everybody. Continue on as you were.
All right, well, so walk us through your top 8 experience, however you will.
Yeah, for sure. So coming into top 8, I'm feeling pretty good just coming off a 3-0 draft. Feeling fairly confident. The top 8 mostly looks very good for me. I think there was 5 Briars, a Chain, Oldham, and myself. So of those, Chain's a reasonable matchup. Not as good as Briar, but definitely winnable. And Briar is exactly what I brought the deck for, so that's great. And then the one matchup I'm really hoping to dodge is the Oldham player who I actually had played previously in Swiss, and man, the game wasn't even close. It was just so brutal. It feels like a really tough matchup, and I'm not sure that you can shore it up with Ice Lexi, maybe with the right build and plan, but I definitely wasn't prepared for that matchup coming into the event. So that was kind of my biggest fear in the top 8. But my first round was against Dante Delphico on Briar, and sort of
Friend
knew
of
that I
the
just
pod.
had to, yeah. So I had to kind of focus on that game and worry about that first, and I didn't have a lot of control over whether or not Oldham won his match. So I just said, well, I'm just going to do my best against Dante. I was, I believe, 6th seed or 7th seed coming in. So I actually ended up being, well, my opponent had the choice every single match, which is not ideal. They chose to go first every single match, which I think is correct. But I think that a lot of players just were caught a little bit off guard. They didn't seem to be practiced against the matchup. I saw people trying to use their tunics when they had frostbites and then realizing they couldn't, and then, maybe having to discard to Chilling Ice Vein as a result.
I was gonna bring that up. That is the most clutch rule, that they cannot use tunic to pay for frostbite, because otherwise it would be a lot easier on the Briar players. Like, that was just the all-star of every game, really, in that matchup.
Totally. Yeah, no, it's so incredibly good. Because at first I thought, like, oh, the frostbite's basically a hamstring shot, but the fact that it locks up their tunic is a huge deal.
It's super huge. Yeah. In our like limited testing, I was always on the ice deck with tunic, and you're just like, should I just side this out in this matchup? Because it, like, over the course of the game, instead of it getting me 6 resources, it maybe gets me 2. You know what I mean? Like, it just never gets its value whatsoever. So yeah, it's
Right,
it's like a huge bonus that Lexi has, is you take away like one of the best, most efficient pieces in the game,
And it makes it so one frostbite is like a whole, right? Because specifically for this 0-cost deck, one frostbite is -1 card for them, which is astoundingly powerful, And without the tunic to bail them out, it's just like 1 card less for every turn.
Yeah. No, it's really, really good, because even if they have a blue or something, they don't really need the resources. Like, maybe they pitch the blue and they get a Rosetta Thorn off and get to save their tunic, but then again, it's just like the tunic's just kind of sitting there not getting value. So
100%.
So yeah, I agree that the tunic's very awkward into the ice deck. Another thing that ended up happening quite a bit was some of my opponents were trying to make rune chants on the first turn by pitching 2 cards, which lets me set up an arrow into Arsenal on their turn and then come at them with a 5-card hand when I was going second, which is actually pretty good. It makes, like, normally I would like to go first and get the 6-card hand and really grab tempo, but if I get to get the arrow and Arsenal on their turn because they've thrown away some of their hand, it makes the matchup quite a bit more favorable, or makes it quite a bit easier to start with. Going into top 8, honestly, a lot of the games are a little bit of a blur. I played Briar every single match. I drew very well for the most part. I was hitting 3 of a kinds. I was hitting my arrows. I was fusing. It just felt like the deck was really humming. I had a little bit of awkwardness in some of my Briar matchups earlier in the day, like in some of the Swiss rounds, or I guess the previous day. But in top 8, it was just perfect. The deck was doing exactly what I wanted. And I felt like most of the games were like close on life totals, but they didn't feel very close. I felt like I was always in control and kind of things were on my terms. I was able to keep them off of too many embodiments and just really, really pull ahead. I guess one notable play was there was one turn in semifinals against Isaac where I had pretty much had the game locked up. I think we were both at 12, and I had a full hand, and I had 3 of a kind. I think I had an Icequake, a blue Icequake in Arsenal, a red Icequake in hand, and I had played them out and then played my 3 of a kind. But the thing I was missing was an arrow, and I was drawing my cards up one at a time, just trying to be like, make sure I don't overdraw or something silly. And my first card's a blue card, and I already have a blue in my hand. It's not an arrow. I draw another blue ice card. I'm going, oh my goodness, is this going to be like, a repeat of your experience?
Got him.
And then my last one is a yellow arrow, and I'm kind of looking, and I'm like, well, I'm glad I got the arrow. This still isn't ideal. I can only attack once, and if he blocks it out, like, it's not like I'm at least he uses his hand, but it's not great for me. So I'm kind of sitting there in the tank a little bit. And I'm actually pretty stressed out, and I just have to like gather myself and collect myself and try to not let him know that I'm stressed out. So what I end up doing is I end up putting the arrow in and giving it go again, because I want him to think that I actually have more arrows coming, and I want him to be kind of afraid. And it was still since it's a yellow arrow, I had the +3 and the +1. It ends up being an attack for 8, go again. So he wasn't too hot on blocking it out. I think he threw one card down, and I just pitched all my blues into shock charmers. I think I had like a tunic and 1 resource floating plus 2 more blues. So I activated shock charmers 4 times, and it was on a chilling ice vein. So I just, I put him down to 2, took his whole hand, arsenaled my pulse that I had fused with, just to not let on that I had a bunch of ice cards in my hand, or a bunch of blues in my hand.
Awesome. That is the sickest play.
Yeah.
It felt great.
That's so dope. For the listeners at home, we have like our videos on, and Yuki is like pretty stone cold like this whole time, and is like very stoic, and it's really fun. But during this story, she got a little bit more animated and was like obviously like, oh yeah, this was a dope play, no big deal. I know it, everybody knows it now, so that's just
totally the Voltaire go again bluff is the sick. Like, one of my favorites is I'll like end my turn with because I was using bracers, right? But with the endless arrow go again, so they're like, and then they have to block, and it's like perfect. Or I had one play against I think, how I beat Tyler Horsepool. I saved 3 cards, and I went down to 2. I had 2 life. He had 4. He was running Bloodsheath in that game, which was like pretty gnarly. But I saved 3 cards: a yellow, a bolt and shot, and an endless arrow. So I played the bolt and shot with 1 floating, and he thinks he has to block it out, because then I load an arrow for free and can afford to play it, So he has to block that out, and then I play the endless arrow for go again, and one of his cards doesn't block, right? So then it hits, and then I can bracers it in to kill him at the end. Sorry, I just remembered that play. That was like my proudest moment in that tournament. I think was like, it just felt like, it feels like range, like knowing the class you're piloting into players who are like kind of unprepared for what you're doing. Coupled with that, just the like, it's just hard to truly understand the versatility of Voltaire until you like pilot it for a while, because like plays like your awesome go again bluff, is like something you don't think about when you read the card. But that coupled with shock charmers is just like, then they have to think about, well, I lose either way, whether I block this out and then can't block the next one, or if I save some for the next one. It's just super, super powerful and very fun to bring that kind of, poker match bluffing game to the table.
Definitely. I would just like everybody to know that I've also done cool plays in Flesh and Blood. That's it.
Yeah, for sure. I agree that Lexi and Voltaire really lend themselves to those kind of interesting decision trees and interesting plays. There's a lot of times also where I'll give go again and maybe have like an arrow face up in my arsenal, and if they don't block, I'll attack with it to make sure that I shut down their turn even more by forcing more discard or more frostbites. But if they do block, I'm pretty happy to just keep it in arsenal a card and save it for next turn to make sure I can keep disrupting them, because I've already got in their hand or all but one card and they have a frostbite, and like, what are they going to do? So yeah, there's often a lot of interesting lines in Ranger that you really need to play and get some reps in with to appreciate just like how much flexibility you have. And it's often like, do I need to pour on the gas right now to get tempo because they're not blocking, or do I need to just set up for next turn and make sure that I can keep disrupting them? Because yeah, even though the matchup's very good, if you have an off turn, the Briar deck just does so much damage, and then we'll get a whole bunch of embodiments. Like it can spiral out of control really, really fast on you. So balancing that is a lot of fun and really, really interesting, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And that's like that type of game theory or analysis, or recognizing those type of play patterns, like definitely separate good players from average players, right? Like an average player would be like, oh sweet, you like blocked, I'll just play out this card to deal more damage, but not understanding that if you get to play another 5, or in Lexi's case, like a 6-card hand, that's even more powerful, because then you can continually strip their cards, and it makes for like such a smaller window for them to like block with 2 cards and kind of apply a little bit extra pressure, right? Like that's what you're really doing, is playing for your next turn and your next turn, not just that particular window, for sure. So
yeah, I think the ice deck, you need to kind of know what your deck does and what your opponent's deck does, and you're often playing 2, 3, even maybe 4 turns ahead. You're thinking about like, my turn right now, my opponent's turn, how much they can dish back and how many embodiments they'll get, and how much can I pressure them next turn to make sure that they also have an off turn the following turn. So there's a lot of like pre-planning, and yeah, it's a very interesting deck.
yeah, totally. It reminds me a lot of like early days when I was playing like Viserai. Like, okay, if I attack with the sword right now, I will have like potentially only 1 rune chant. And what does that mean? Like that deck was like, in the early parts of the meta, that was like something you had to consider, was like, if I attack now and I have less rune chance, or if I attack with this and I have more rune chance, what does that mean in terms of like the game, cards left in my deck, what my opponent can do to me, how I can like pivot off of that, etc.
Yeah, they're a different resource.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
yeah.
Yeah, Ice Lexi has also some of her hit effects are kind of redundant sometimes, which makes it really interesting, because it's like if you hit them with a discard or pay and they pitch a blue, then switching to giving them frostbites is more productive than having them pay 1 more or discard, and vice versa, right? Like once they have 1 frostbite, yeah, if they have 3 it's way better because they don't have a lot of blues, but it's like once they have 1, then stripping a card is also just greater returns. And that's a pretty fun little, I don't know, game you're playing like on your side of the table, like trying to like maximize your different attacks and different ways to strip their power.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, it's actually part of the reason that that I have shock charmers in the deck as well, is that it really kind of takes that to the next level. You can, like, a lot of in the list that I was running, a lot of the blues are also ice cards, so you can use them to fuse, and then you have the option to put them in arsenal and use them for disruption, but you also have the option just to pitch them into shock charmers. And often if you have like 1 floating or a tunic resource, you can get 2 triggers off of it, which is a ton, right? Like you can sometimes go from maybe 1 or 2 frostbites up to 4, which is a really crucial breakpoint. And same thing with the chilling ice vein. Like just like you said, they might have a blue, and you go, well, if they take this, they'll have 1 resource floating, but if I shock charmers twice, then there's going to get a whole extra card from their hand. So there's a lot of interesting, I don't know, flexibility that's given to you by that card.
Sick. So then in the finals, well, I kind of wanted to harken back to this kind of from the beginning of the pod. Did you go into nationals wanting to like be the national champ? Was that the whole goal when you signed up?
Yeah, I mean, I knew there was a lot of good players, and I wasn't sure exactly how far I could get. In terms of a goal, I definitely really wanted to day two, and felt like I had a pretty good shot at day twoing. And I also thought I had a pretty good shot at top eighting if I could day two, just because the last portion was draft, and I was pretty confident in that. So I was really going for top eight and just trying to see how well I could do. But I think that once I sat down and I saw the metagame, and especially once Oldham, so Demos ended up losing to Isaac in the other quarterfinals match. I was actually sitting next to them, and after my game, I just sat and watched them, and it was an incredible match, very very intense, right down to the wire. But once I saw that Oldham was knocked out, and I realized that it was Briars the whole way, I sort of went, wow, I'm in a great spot. Like, this couldn't be better. And all I need to do is just play well. And as long as I don't, have some really unfortunate draws or something, or make some major mistakes, like, I can definitely take this down. So, yeah, I was definitely coming in hoping to win. But, I guess when there was a certain point where I felt like I was like, oh, I think this is going to happen. And I felt like I had all the momentum. And certainly after beating Dante in the quarters, I was like, well, I wasn't too familiar with Isaac or Sean, but like, Dante's a pretty darn good player. Like, how much worse could it be, right? So, yeah, I just felt super confident at that point. And yeah, the games went really, really well for me. So very, very fortunate.
Nice.
Hell yeah. Yeah, mine's a joke, so I'm gonna say it first.
Go for
just the like buzz around Canada was just like, who's gonna win second, because everybody thought Dante was gonna be like the Canadian national champ. And as much as I like Dante, I'm really happy that there's like a bit of parity, and that it's like Ice Lexi, and it's you, our new friend. It's just freaking sweet. Just really cool, Yuki. I'm really happy for you. Go ahead, Isaac.
Thank you.
And really, really, making all of us Ranger players proud and giving us hope. That's like super, super rad.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So I had a little bit of a technical question. I did not actually own shock charmers when I went, so I didn't even think about it. But do you run Frostfang instead of CNC? Because you can pitch a blue for Frostfang and then pitch another blue and like double charmers it.
I do run it instead of CNC. The Charmers on Frostfang's not amazing, since Charmers only copies on damage effects, so it's really good with the fuse ice arrows, but it's not so good with Frostfangs on hit.
Frostfang is a hit effect.
Yeah, it's a hit effect instead. Right. But I do play it because it's an ice card, and this is actually something I discovered. It was tech I discovered in Blitz. Originally, I had CNCs in my list like you, and I also had Enlightened Strikes as well. And what I realized was that those cards were great for increasing the power level of your deck, but I also felt like it hurt the consistency. There was a lot of times where I would draw 3 of a kind, and I would just draw like a Command and Conquer or an Enlightened Strike, and I went, what is this stupid card doing in my hand right now? Like, it doesn't pitch, it doesn't fuse. I guess I can arsenal it, but I probably want to arsenal an ice card. Like, it's just the last thing that I want to see. And especially in Blitz, where the game's so condensed, like, that little bit of awkwardness can lose the game for you on the spot. So I originally had tried like a 1 of Ice Fang, just to get, another threat in the deck that wasn't an arrow that I could play, to kind of enable like some 3 attack turns. And also another thing that I found awkward about Enlightened Strike and Command and Conquer is that you can't buff them with Weave Ice or with Pulse. And I was looking at Pulse, and sometimes I'm like, man, this card's supposed to be one of the best cards in my deck. But when I had in Lightning Strike or Command and Conquer, it just is the last thing that I want to have. So I tried a 1 of Frostfang, and almost immediately I went up to a 2 of in my Blitz deck, and I took that over to CC as well. I decided to stick with 2 because I don't think you really don't want to draw multiples of it, but the card is really impressive. And to anybody who is playing Ice Ranger or Ice Lexi, I would definitely recommend trying it. I think you won't be disappointed. The card is incredibly effective. There's some really cool lines that you can do with it, like one of them is pitching a blue and playing a red Icequake, and then attacking with Frostfang, and usually you've flipped up either the Icequake or the Frostfang, so you've already given them a Frostbite. You're attacking for 8 with a discard on hit and another Frostbite on hit, so you're taking 2 cards from their hand minimum. It's this really awkward attack to block out as well, and that's really powerful. Also, Pulse with Frostfang is incredible. If you ever flip up a Pulse and go 9 go again on my Frostfang to start my turn, it's just like, what does your opponent even do? It's gross.
Yeah. Gross, so, indeed.
Yeah, the card is very, very good, and I would never imagine cutting it. I play it in every matchup. I think it's great.
Nice. And so that brings up a universal point with all of the new heroes from the last 2 sets and their talents, right? Is like they're just so chained to their game plan, right? That if you want to pull from the toolbox of their class cards, your game plan or your consistency goes way down, right? Like I don't run in Lightning Strikes. I do run Command and Conquers for the Icequake CNC combo, but I saw like you run Sleep Dart, which I'm sure is like awesome against Lightning Briar, and I like shied away from it because it's 1 less Weave Ice target, et cetera, but it's just, that's another thing that's really hard to kind of weigh, is like what generic ranger or whatever class tools are powerful enough to merit decreasing the synergy of my deck, and I guess you got there, like you run Sleep Dart and Endless Arrow, and do you run Remorseless?
Yeah, I run Remorseless. I run Red Bolt and Shot. I usually never have all of those cards in.
Right.
I would typically leave some of them in the sideboard. Just because like you said, it does decrease your consistency. I wound up feeling like the Sleep Dart was just too good to pass up on, though. It's really good into Briar, and it's actually good into a lot of matchups. It can be pretty funny in the mirror as well. If your opponent has an arrow face down, like they have to block it, or they just, what are they going to do? Attack you once?
Totally. Ranger is the best against Ranger.
Yeah, it's surprising, isn't it? Yeah.
That's funny. So then when do you bring in those extra non elemental ranger cards? Is that kind of your Bravo package?
Yeah, it kind of depends. So I was playing Remorseless and Bolt and Shots all of the time. Against Briar, I brought in the Sleep Darts, and I would bring in like 1 or 2 Endless Arrows. Against Bravo, I wouldn't play the Sleep Darts, and against most of the control decks, I wouldn't play the Sleep Darts. It's just not very good against them.
Right.
And I would bring in, so I board those out. I would bring in like the Cold Waves and the Flake Outs, and also bring in the yellow Weave Ices, and that was sort of my tech for Bravo. Just getting much more dominate was really good, and the yellow Weave Ice with the Frostfang is also really nice because it pushes it up to a 7, and that's those breakpoints are always really relevant. Against Bravo, I was often boarding up to maybe like 68, 69 cards. Some of the other control decks like Dash or like Prism, I think are a little less prone to trying to fatigue you, and a little bit more like Dash will pressure you quite a bit, and it's a little bit more of a race. So I would maybe board up to 65 or so cards. Usually just trying to pick the best arrows for the matchup. And I think I always had at least some of them in my sideboard.
Sick.
Nice way to maintain your ratios. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you very much have to have. You have to make sure that your 60 card ratio, and if you're boarding up, that you keep that same ratio. Otherwise, your deck's just not gonna do what you want it to do consistently.
Awesome. I thought you Ranger nerds were just going to keep going for forever.
I mean, yeah, I could talk all night, but we do have a limited time on our podcast.
Totally. Y'all just keep going. I got to pull up the cards for our signature segment. So,
ooh, nice.
Just keep going.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I have a couple fun questions here. Is there anything in particular you are looking for or looking forward to in the upcoming festival?
The upcoming festival. I'm really curious to kind of get some of the, like, I don't follow the Fab lore that much, but I am kind of intrigued by this one. It just seems so fun. I'm also really excited for the new cards, of course, for Ranger,
Nice.
but also for Prism, who I really like. I think she could use some new tools, and it could be quite interesting. And maybe for some of the classes we haven't seen get cards in a long time, like like the Kanos and stuff. I think it's really exciting, and I hope that they get a little bit of support, because as much as the metagame is very diverse and in a pretty good place right now, I think it'd be nice to see even more heroes in there, and some of those underrepresented classes or underrepresented heroes get some tools. So I think that's what I'm mostly looking forward to. Yeah.
Nice.
How about you,
Yeah.
Isaac?
We just talked about this actually on our sister podcast a bit, so go check that out on YouTube. I just signaled with my hand, but nobody can see me since this is audio only. But yeah, there are some classes like I talked about. Reinar is like super. That's actually a pretty nuanced class and kind of like difficult to play sometimes, and really excels in like a mid-range game, a game that I very much enjoy. But he's been kind of left behind in this hyper aggressive Monarch and post Monarch meta. So like some Reinar tools, and like you mentioned, Kano. I'm not looking for any like game breaking cards, but just more tools, like a different chain lightning or whatever, just more tools for the toolbox, and to make some of these characters, I guess, more relevant. We talked a little bit about like, I personally think too many decks kind of auto lose to Lightning Briar, right? And it doesn't have to be a favorable matchup or even a good one, but if you have some tools to be able to board in and stand a chance, right? And maybe you win 1 out of 3, but just, for those players whose characters aren't very playable right now, just to have the tools to be able to, try at the matchup would be like very nice, I think.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And that was one of the cool things about Crucible, is it seemed to give a lot of the heroes new ways to play the class. And that was like one of the most exciting things. And I hope we get some of that in the festival as well. Just like new ways to interact with those heroes. And like you said, it's not about it being super powerful or game breaking. It's just like more fun ways to enjoy the heroes that we already have.
Yeah, definitely.
Dope. Before we get into our signature segments, great stuff, guys, by the way. I have some questions from Twitter for you, Yuki.
Nice.
Oh, okay.
And then we'll get into the kind of more fun stuff. So first up, from friend of the pod, Tommy Fresh. What was the pivotal moment that made you decide to rock with Lexi?
Yeah, definitely. I was talking about it, I think, while watching UK Nats. I wasn't quite watching it live. I was busy on the day, so I was kind of going through the VODs. But that weekend I was like already talking about about Ice Lexi, and in my group chat with my testing team, I think this is the deck to play, either Briar or Ice Lexi, and I was pretty set on Ice Lexi just because I love the deck and I thought it just seemed so sweet into the matchup. But once I had tested and realized just how good it was, and also that the Bravo matchup was surprisingly good, I pretty much locked in at that point. I think that was my biggest fear, was that, I have a good matchup into Briar, but like I don't want to be giving up tons of equity in all my other matchups. But yeah, just everywhere I was testing the deck, or at least in all the major matchups, it seemed to be, really solid. And like I felt like I had a fighting chance, which is, a great place to be. So I think that was kind of really what solidified me into Ice Lexi, was just seeing that, the game plan is actually pretty comprehensive and you have a lot of strategies to fight most of the heroes.
Awesome. Next question from Zane, Big Spoon Zane, kept Isaac warm and safe at nationals. Why Ice Lexi versus Oldheim? Do you believe Ice Lexi has the tools to compete in the meta that may end up being more balanced / less Briar centric?
Yeah, I think that Ice Lexi absolutely does. The big matchup that I think you would need to solve potentially is Oldheim if he becomes more popular. I do think that is a really tough matchup, and I don't have good answers into that. But the other matchups, some of them from testing and some of them more theoretical, but I think you have pretty good game plans, and I think that you certainly have the tools to adapt the deck to be able to compete with pretty much all the classes except for maybe Oldheim. In terms of why I went for Ice Lexi, it was just the deck that I was more familiar with. Like I do have some of the Oldheim cards, but I was missing a whole bunch of them. Like I don't have a Tectonic Plating. I don't have a bunch of the Guardian cards. And I don't have much experience on Guardian either. So I just felt like it wasn't, like I had 3 weeks instead of 2 weeks, but I wasn't confident in the amount of time I had to just like build something new, especially since I was busy with report cards and work, and like I just didn't have that much time to test, unfortunately. So Ice Lexi was a really natural pick just because I had been playing it in Blitz and I had what I felt was a pretty tuned list, and I had figured out my ratios, figured out what cards I wanted, and just went for it.
And you're a ranger at heart.
That too, yeah. I mean, I was the whole time. I think I was maybe took a little bit longer to lock in Lexi, just because I wanted to make sure I was doing it because I thought it was a good pick and not because I wanted the deck to be good.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Both of you are just like a hunting pack of lionesses right now. Terrified over here as the gazelle. This question from Alex you kind of have already answered in the previous two, but just to give Alex some airtime, we're going to read it off anyway. So Alex says, given the meta climate and expecting people to either swap off of or hard target lightning / zero cost Briar, did this impact your deck building choices or decisions of whether or not to bring Lexi at all?
Yeah. So yeah, I think mostly covered it, but the big thing would be if there's a bunch of Oldheims that start showing up, then yeah, that might make me less keen on the deck, or at least go back to the drawing board. I have some crazy ideas about 3 of a kind and take games and reloading multiple times and going very big, but I don't know if it's really good enough. I didn't actually test it or anything, so don't know if that's a good strategy. So don't quote me on that one, but it's just an idea I have kicking around to maybe combat the matchup.
Have you seen Sasha Markovic's like wild OTK Ranger list that he made back in the day?
Yeah, I heard about it, and yeah, definitely somewhat inspired by that list. So I don't know. It could be something to look at, and it might be a way to go over the top of Oldham. But again, yeah, it would require some serious testing and hard work there to figure that out.
Totally.
Yeah, and unfortunately, all those reload cards do not work towards your other Lexi goals. It's the heartbreaking reality we all face.
Yeah, totally. So it is interesting though, because like I don't know how much you need the disruption against Oldham specifically. So maybe there's like a sideboard package you could have, but yeah, I don't know.
It's very exciting. I wish we could keep talking all night because there's a lot of stuff like we didn't really, I feel like, get to that I wanted to talk about, but we're, at like an hour and a half here. So our listeners don't really keep listening if we go over 2 hours. So
Totally.
we're just going to move it along here.
Yeah, and we kind of care about that and try to keep it under
Totally.
2.
But we'll have to have you back on, Yuki, for just like, more hangs, more talks, more podcasting and
Show
stuff.
off your second Nationals trophy. Things like that.
Well, hopefully we have her on before then.
Oh, right. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to be on the show again. It's been a lot of fun chatting with you too.
Hell yeah. Great. Well, that leads us into our signature segment. So first up is Pick, Pass, Pray. It is a draft scenario. I'm going to give you 3 cards, and you're going to let me know which one you're going to pick, pass, and pray comes back around. Are you ready?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, first card is So Tomorrow Blue. It pitches for 3, costs 1. It's an Earth action, defends for 2, and it reads, put target Earth or Elemental action card with cost 2 or greater from your graveyard on the bottom of your deck. Banish So Tomorrow. If So Tomorrow is played from Arsenal, draw a card. Okay, that's the first card. Second card, Weave Lightning Yellow. Pitches for 2, costs 0. It's a lightning action and it defends for 2. The next lightning or elemental attack action card you play this turn gains +2. If it's fused, it gains Go Again. Go Again. Okay? Third card, Red Winter's Bite. It pitches for 1, costs 0, is an ice action, defends for 2, and it reads, target hero discards a card unless they pay 3 resources. Go Again. The winds of winter are always hunting for prey on the slopes of Mount Eisen. All right, Yuki. Ranger Queen, National Champ. Which one are you going to pick? Which one are you going to pass? And which one are you going to pray? Comes back around.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. It's very close. I think I'd lean towards the yellow Weave Lightning. It's just such a powerful card, and it's the least replaceable of them all, I think. I do really like blue So Tomorrow, though. Just pitching blue for Oldham is very good, and it's also solid in the Briar deck. It helps you against Fatigue Oldham, and it's also just a non-attack that replaces itself, which is great. I think, however, the Weave Lightning is a little bit harder to replace, and also it goes well into either Lexi or Briar, and then you can maybe perhaps wheel even maybe the So Tomorrow or the other ice card as well. And I would be looking to wheel either one really based on where the draft leads me. So if I'm in Lexi, I would want the ice card, and if I'm Oldham, I'd want the earth card.
Nice. A little less definitive than usual, but I like it. Isaac, what are your picks?
Yeah, I'm also going to pick Weave Lightning 100%. Just because, yeah, like in Briar, the Fuse Go Again effect enables Rosetta, which is like the best card in the format. And then in Lexi, the Lexi Reveal more often probably enables go again. So that being online for both characters is really, really powerful, I think. And free buffs are just kind of rare and pretty sought after in this format. I think you're probably right about the Sodamaro pick. I'm still feeling a little jaded in that Earth is always just gobbled up instantly. So I'm going to pray the Winter's Bite comes back around. A Frostbite and a card strip is pretty powerful in Lexi. This card has utility for pushing damage in Oldhim. It's not really my favorite, and I don't pick it, very often, but definitely has quite a bit of utility. And the only reason I'm picking it is because I think that picking or praying Sodamaro comes back around is hoping for Earth to be open, and Sodamaro Blue is not necessarily my favorite Earth card. Also, the way my brain works is I'm a little bit too impatient for control or fatigue Oldhim, and I will play that if it's my seat, and I will certainly try to draft it, but it's not my most powerful pilot. So just for me personally, I'm not a master of all archetypes, so I gotta kind of cross my fingers for something I'm good at. All right, Taylor, what's it gonna be?
Well, this one's actually really hard for me because I really like all three of these non-attack actions for a bunch of different reasons. But I do think the Weave Lightning for sure edges these other two out, just in terms of like a pack one, pick one scenario, which this is 100% is. Especially like, yellow is totally fine, because it also pitches and it does everything else you want it to do for sure into two really great archetypes, Lightning Lexi and Lightning Briar. And kind of because of that, I kind of pray that the So Tomorrow comes back around, because then it's just kind of like another non-attack action that replaces itself or pitches, and it really helps out both, I think, Briar and Oldhim. So if I do like on picks 4, 5, or 6, notice Oldhim is open, I know that So Tomorrow is coming back around, and that's just like a pretty solid card for the defense reaction. And so I'm going to pass on Winter's Bite, even though for like all of the reasons already stated that it's really good. It's just kind of more of the narrow card out of these three, and it doesn't leave you like a lot of flexibility in that pick, especially early in the draft. It's like really great if you get multiples of it, right? Like especially in the higher values, but yeah, it's kind of the least desirable, because especially if you pick the Weave Lightning and you get that So Tomorrow, Briar's really strong, so that's kind of nice. So yeah, those are my picks. Pick Weave, pray for So, pass on Winter. Boom. There we go.
Great.
Go ahead, Isaac.
So here at the Attack Action Podcast, we like to play a lot of different board games, not just Flesh and Blood. And sometimes we'll share a board game with you guys. This is not the best board game in the world or our favorite, but it's one we think that some of you will enjoy and hopefully you'll check out. So today's board game from the closet is Yuki's.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the board games that I really enjoy playing is called Mansions of Madness. It's a cooperative board game. The version that I played is supported by an app. I think there's an older version that wasn't, but you can easily run it on like a laptop or an iPad or something. And the game is really awesome. It's sort of like a HP Lovecraft horror universe kind of game, and the whole thing is that you're detectives and you're given a scenario and you're investigating some strange things happening in town. And the game just tells such an awesome story and just feels really, really immersive. And I feel like it's easy to pick up and play. The rules are really straightforward, and it's just like an awesome game to just hang out and have fun. And I think a lot of people, one of the things I like the most about this game is that like there's enough in it in terms of like optimization and thinking about things that you can get pretty into it, even if like you're like really into board games. But also like people who don't play that many board games have had a lot of fun playing this game in my experience, just because you can, like, it's so story driven and the plot's really fun, and all the scenarios are pretty good. So that's really nice. It usually takes kind of maybe 2 to 4 hours to play, depending on the scenario. Has like some puzzles to solve, a little bit of combat, and one of my favorite mechanics for sure is that so your characters can get hurt physically, but they can also get hurt mentally from all the scary and strange things going on, and so that can hurt your sanity. And if you lose too much of your sanity, your character becomes insane, and you get a card, and a lot of the effects are really fun. Like some of them make you, like, if you're close to somebody, you have to try and steal items from them, or like I can't remember. They all have like really funny effects, and there's always this sort of. And the other rule about the insanity cards is you don't get to share them with the other people at the table. You have to keep them hidden. So you're always kind of like, oh, like what is this person going to do? And some of them are pretty brutal. Like some of them, the person will try and betray you or something like this. So it's pretty interesting. And some of them also do nothing. So I thought that was just like a really flavorful and really kind of fun wrinkle that the game throws in. And yeah, I've had a blast every time that I've played it. So maybe one to check out if you're looking for a kind of cooperative, story-driven horror game. I wouldn't say it's like overly scary or anything. I don't do super well with horror, but it's a fun one.
Excellent. Yeah, I've played Mansions of Madness quite a few times, and it's definitely fun for sure. I'm more of a analog person, so the app part of it kind of detracts a little bit for me. But that's like my personal preference, and everybody else at the table was like, this is so fun. And I was like, cool. Well, this is an infectious spirit, so let's keep this going, So it's great. It's great. It's a good game.
For sure.
Awesome.
I also don't love like extremely scary movies or things like that. Like there's enough to be scared of in the real world, like I just want to have fun in a movie. But I do very much like the Lovecraft setting for board game shows, anything. It's just like really immersive.
The more pulpy aspects of it, where you're like part of, you're kind of like Indiana Jones.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's really fun. They have like a whole bunch of different games set in that universe, and it's always kind of a fun little spin.
Hell yeah. Well, that's our show. Yuki, where can the people get a hold of you if they have more burning questions about the Ice Lexi deck or whatever? They just want to congratulate you.
Yeah, I don't have a huge online presence at the moment. I might look at doing some content and some stuff like that going forward. Right now, the best way is probably on Discord. For anybody from Canada, I'm in the main Canadian Discord. My tag is Sylia, Sylia. You can find me there. And I'm also on sort of the main Flesh and Blood Discord that has like all the people talking about different classes and tons of people on there. So under the same username there, and feel free to shoot me a message. I've been posting a little bit in the Lexi class discussion since people have some questions, and always happy to chat.
Awesome. Yeah, you gotta get on those tweets.
I do.
Get your
your
70 followers, right. And it's excellent. You just tweet out random shit. You could be like Brendan and just post selfies of himself every once in a while. Maybe he's like holding a card, that seems to
Yeah.
do well for him.
Yeah, I don't know if I can compete with his hair, but who knows?
I don't know. Yours is pretty good. It's like it's a different vibe for sure, but
Than the short white.
yeah, totally. Well, I've had a lot of fun on this podcast, and I could sit here and ask you 5,000 more questions about, minutia, gameplay, favorite soup, all of that stuff. But we'll have to save that for another pod. So I hope you come back on and we find another reason to sit down and have a podcast and that sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure. It's been a pleasure being on the show, and I'd love to come back on and chat with you more. It's been a fun time, and hopefully the listeners will have enjoyed it as well if they're still here.
Yeah, who knows if they ever make it this far? I don't know.
I'm sure they are. You're very famous.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, we really upgraded our podcast from Nationals top 8er to Nationals champion. So
Well, there's not that much of a difference. Come on now. I think top 8 is the main. There's a reason that in TCG's top 8 is how people are measured. So, and yeah.
nice.
That's plenty of
Isaac definitely needed that confidence boost, so he won't say it, but he thanks you.
I'm fine. Don't project your insecurities onto me. Anyway,
Well,
on that
yeah.
strong note, once again,
Yep, nailed
good night,
it.
everyone.
Good night.
Good night.